The meaning of life is orange, scaled, and often left in the care of small children. The meaning of life is a goldfish. Because after all, what encapsulates the universe's messy, profound questions more than pet fish? Caring for pet fish, a common part of growing up, is often children's first encounter with death and the ephemeral nature of life. It is these fishy experiences that shape our perceptions of life and death and the meanings we prescribe to both. At the very least, it's what has shaped mine. The time has come. I'm going to expose my own sordid history of pet fish for you all in the hopes that, just maybe, we can learn something from it. In the beginning, there was a girl and her fish. I was around 3 when I got my first goldfish. The day she left us for the great fish tank in the sky, I cried for a solid hour. I was, and still am, one of many children crying over their fish. A cursory search on Amazon for children pet loss will reveal an overwhelming number of picture books with titles like Pets in Heaven and A Rainbow Bridge for Gus. It's nice to imagine Gus crossing his rainbow bridge, but some children might begin to wonder, where does Gus go once he crosses the rainbow bridge? If there's a pet heaven, is there a pet hell? What if Gus simply falls off the bridge into nothingness? Is that better or worse than going to pet hell? Is the rainbow bridge of life worthless then, if there's nothing on the other end? Gus died, so will I die? Does everyone die? Then why was Gus here in the first place? Why are we here? That's a little too much philosophizing for your average 3-year-old, but understanding death is actually a key part of our earliest years of life. In a classic study by Hungarian psychologist Maria Nagy, nearly 400 children growing up just after World War II were asked, "What is death?" Subsequent research has further delineated children's responses to this question. You begin understanding death at ages 3 to 5 when you realize that death is different to being alive and that it is irreversible. At 5 to 7, you learn about non-functionality, that the dead cannot do what the living can, and about universality, that everything, including yourself, must die. All components of perceiving death, including knowing what causes it, are fully achieved by age 10. You are now mature enough to face the existential terror. Congratulations. Of course, many children will also grow up with religious beliefs about death. Major religions can be divided into 2 categories: Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and Indian religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. All offer a higher purpose in life, whether it's to become enlightened because existence is suffering, Buddhism's first noble truth, or to follow the teachings of God to join him in heaven. And all offer something after death. Abrahamic religions have a heaven and hell in their respective sacred texts, so life after death has been promised by God. Indian religions have reincarnation, which is part of samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. Moksha is enlightenment, or liberation from the cycle. Afterlife beliefs can be traced back to prehistory, with the recent discovery of a toddler's 78,000-year-old grave in Kenya becoming the earliest known human burial. Yet, wouldn't some objective scientific evidence about death and the afterlife also be reassuring? Science can't currently tell us what happens after we die, but it can tell us about how and why we die. Assuming the best, the longest you can live is 120 years, though some new research suggests 150. This limit is due to aging. The number of senescent cells in your body, cells which permanently stop dividing but do not die, increases with age, decreasing the immune system's efficiency and degrading cognitive functions. Complications arising from these age-related conditions are what will flush us all down the figurative toilet in the end. Senolytics, drugs that clear out senescent cells, could be a way to extend our lifespan by delaying age-related ailments. This field of study is young, so the full consequences of eliminating these cells is still unknown. Any health benefits will be decades into the future. The same goes for other anti-aging treatments, such as rejuvenation by controlled reprogramming, wherein Yamanaka factors are applied to cells for long enough to reverse cellular aging without returning the cell to pluripotency. So now we know how Gus dies and ways we could slow his death down. But why does Gus die in the first place? There are many evolutionary theories of aging which continue to evolve today. I'm going to just briefly break down the 2 major theories that originated in the 1940s and 50s. Natural selection, aka survival of the fittest, is the process by which evolution occurs. Organisms best adapted to their environment are most likely to survive, allowing their desirable traits to be passed down until the trait becomes common in the population. Peter Medawar's mutation accumulation theory proposes that if the force of selection declines with age, mutations could accumulate in the population which have no effect early in life but harmful effects later in life. This may explain why late-onset diseases were not eliminated in pre-modern populations, as most people would have died well before they could experience the disease. George C. Williams' antagonistic pleiotropy theory developed this idea further by proposing that strong selection at early ages may favour mutations with beneficial effects on survival and reproduction, even if these same mutations exhibit harmful effects at advanced ages. These theories all strongly link aging to the way humans are intrinsically made, so we aren't breaking up with death anytime soon. For now, science remains the third wheel in this eternal relationship. And we're not bothered by that because, well, we're used to death. I certainly got a little too used to death among my fish. At around age 7, I started insisting on goldfish as my birthday presents. I was a terrible fish carer, so the fish never made it to my next birthday, despite the fact they can live from 10 to 15 years. I understood what death was, but I couldn't accept that my fish had died. Though perhaps I could have, if little me had understood death on a deeper, philosophical level. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates held that death is either a dreamless sleep or a passage to the afterlife, where physical bodies are lost, but our minds remain. Either option is nothing to fear. Of course, a dreamless sleep sounds like a pleasant way to phrase the horrifying concept of non-existence. Then again, we spent the entire history of the universe in non-existence until we were born, and we don't recall that time as a particularly terrifying experience. But what about the death of our loved ones? Should we fear that? According to Taoist philosopher Zhuangzi, nope. This guy sang joyously and banged on pots after his wife died, and not because he had an awful marriage, but because of his philosophy. It is useless to fear death, which is natural and inevitable, so we should instead view it as one more phase in a larger transformational movement. Transformation doesn't necessarily mean an afterlife, as dead matter still fertilizes the ground, leading to new life. By age 15, I had accepted that my goldfish were now fertilizer for my mum's plant pots. But my fish addiction relapsed when my friend moved away and gave me her hundreds of guppy fish. Guppies give birth to live young, unlike goldfish, and reproduce incredibly efficiently. This difference, along with my mum's fish midwifery, led to a thriving population. That is the meaning of life in terms of biology, because life's goal is simply to survive and perpetuate itself. The meaning of life in terms of its scientific definition is tricky to explain precisely. Many definitions are operational, allowing us to separate living organisms by their characteristics that are absent from material objects. Whatever its definition, life may have appeared as early as 4.28 billion years ago. We don't know the details of how life first emerged from non-living matter, a process known as abiogenesis, but it was likely an evolutionary process of increasing complexity. While what constitutes consciousness in neural terms is an ongoing debate, consciousness probably evolved so organisms could have delayed and planned responses to stimuli, moving beyond mere reflexive responses. Higher mammals have a basic sense of self, with primates able to internally represent their own thinking patterns, and humans able to reflect on our own existence as conscious beings. When reflecting, we all want to ensure our existence is a good one by finding meaning. So, what is the meaning of life? Let's start with the most basic answer. Life has no meaning. This is nihilism, and I'm sure we've all felt this way at some point. German philosopher Nietzsche made a distinction between passive and active nihilists. Passive nihilists accept nihilism as the endpoint in the search for meaning, while active nihilists use it to construct new meaning. Active nihilists have a lot in common with existentialists, with Nietzsche among the earliest figures associated with existentialism. As the sunny counterpart to nihilism, It too rejects any inherent meaning in life, but emphasizes that people make decisions based on subjective meaning. We are free to choose our values and purpose. Maybe you'll decide part of your purpose is to care for your pet fish. But how can you find any meaning with true certainty? This conflict between our tendency to seek inherent meaning in life and our inability to find it is known as the absurd. Absurdist philosopher Camus stated we should embrace the absurd condition of human existence and live in defiance against mortality and its limits. Or maybe our search to find meaning is the meaning of life. In his aptly named memoir, Man's Search for Meaning, philosopher and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl used his experiences in Nazi concentration camps to posit just that. He describes the main sources of meaning as purposeful work, love, and courage. With so much philosophy and even more that I haven't been able to mention, how do we know what to think? Perhaps we can just choose whatever works best for ourselves. I began to understand what worked best for myself last year. Having left my fish in the fatally incompetent care of my dad over the summer, I returned to find them pushed to the brink of extinction. I was distressed that my fish's lives were cut short and that my care and hard work had gone to waste. But then I found out that 2 of the last female guppies had given birth. My new generation of pet fish isn't bothered by the existential terror that preceded them. They're just living. And that's kind of beautiful. Instead of death and the afterlife, I want to focus on what happens during life. At least in theory, it's much easier to take charge of our own lives and our own goals. Everybody always likes to declare their goal is to change the world, and I am no exception to this overambition. Of course, it's a big leap from changing my fish tank water to changing the world, but hopefully this talk has helped you broaden your perspective. Maybe it even made a small change in how you view your purpose in life. Every fish, every human, everyone dies. We can still go ahead and try to find what we need to make living meaningful. Thank you.